Welcome, everyone, to our webinar, Streamlining Operations, Integrating Systems for Human Service Organizations. My name is Katie Belanger. I'm a partner here at AAFCPAs, and I'm one of the leaders in the Community Impact Human Service Practice area. On behalf of our Community Impact Human Service Practice, I'd like to welcome you and really express my gratitude. Thank you so much for spending some time with us over the next hour. I'd like to talk about why this topic now. Why do we want to talk about streamlining operations within human service agencies? So we see firsthand in the human service industry, as we're out on our audits, really the unique complexities that you all are facing daily, balancing the demand for comprehensive, client-focused care with the need to manage your resources efficiently. Our discussion today is about how integrated systems and streamlined processes can really transform the way your organization operates. By connecting systems and optimizing workflows, we can empower teams to work smarter, not harder, focus more on the mission and high-level analysis, and less on the administrative burden. The challenges that we see, we know you have multiple programs. Each program is funded, could be funded differently through various state and federal agencies, private philanthropy. All your grants may have different structures, different compliance reporting requirements at different times. So leaving you with multiple systems. You're being asked to measure the impact of your programs more and more, and being able to demonstrate your impact is really critical, for future growth and funding. All of these challenges really lead to how important it is to have streamlined operations. You have programs running out of multiple locations across the state and perhaps beyond. And the population served, the demographics are really important to capture. So really having all of these moving pieces really adds to the complexity of a human service agency. So this is why we're here today. So I am joined by my partner, Robyn Leet, and our wonderful client, Adam Shuster. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. There is a poll coming up, so please answer the poll, but we're going to keep going as you do so. So,
yep. Hi, everyone. Glad you can make it here today. Really happy to have you. This is going to be a really fun and exciting time, I think, and shed some light on how we work with our clients and how clients really feel about working with us. So my name is Robyn Leet. I'm a partner with the business process niche of our business and IT consulting team. And we're going to get a lot more into the role that I play later on. So I'm going to hand it over to Adam Shuster, who is our guest of honor.
Thanks, Robyn. Thanks, Katie, for inviting me. I'm happy to be here. My name is Adam Shuster. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Incompass Human Services. I've been here for about 6.5 years and spent the past 21 or so years as a CFO in the nonprofit world, mostly in the social service sector. Just a little bit about Incompass. They told me I could have a minute or two to talk about the agency, which I appreciate. We provide services to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities to help them thrive in their communities. And we do this through residential, day, and family support services. Next, I want to talk a little bit about sort of how I fit into and why I'm part of this webinar today. I had identified a new ERP, which is a fancy name for an accounting system, as a strategic need for Incompass back in 2020, and then had some conversation with Robyn about how AAFCPAs could help us. So we initially retained Robyn and her team to do a BPA, a business process analysis, which I know she's going to talk a little bit about more later, that we could identify and address the duplication and inefficiencies in our then current procedures before moving forward with the search for our new system. That went really well, and once that was complete, we extended the project to include guiding us through the system selection process, and then again to serve as the project manager for our system implementation.
Yeah, and I think going back to that time, I know Adam and I have been working. So I serve as the audit partner for Encompass, and I've been working with Adam since he joined 6.5 years ago. And I think it's important to note, as this was going on, we were working with Encompass, and during our audit process, we utilized this required compliance process that you have to go through to look at ways that our clients are looking at people, process, and systems, and have various conversations with our clients throughout the year. So we knew Encompass was growing. Excuse me. Sorry, I was about to sneeze. We knew Encompass was growing. Another, nonprofit of good size, merged into Encompass at the time COVID started. So there was just a lot of, Adam didn't like the system. There was a lot of kind of pain points around that. So in talking about, what to do from there, that's where the introduction to Robyn came in. So I think that was, really. There was growth in service area, growth in employees, growth in programs, and the need to go remote, all factored into that. So
that's where I got to come play. My team works with clients to really have that trifecta of coming up with a plan, developing those short-term, long-term goals of that strategy, and then using systems and process to really support that. So the systems really should be that backbone for the organization, providing the frameworks, providing the controls, and then that process should really meet it so that all of the staff that are using the systems are really bound to that process, and it should be of the utmost efficiency to make all of this work together in the right way. Oops. So for working with Adam, this is something that we typically do with clients of no matter what the eventual goal, we really need to get to know you. So Adam did come to us knowing that there was going to be a system change. He had some pretty choice words for the system they were on and really disliked it. So we knew that that was going to be the end goal, but how we got there really needed to be determined step by step. So like you said, we did start off doing what we call a business process assessment, which really is getting down and dirty with everyone who works on the process. We want to learn firsthand from the people doing the work, how they do the work, why they do the work, and how that work lends to the bigger picture. So after that, we're able to come up with requirements for a system and how other platforms out there could meet those requirements. So Adam ended up doing, I think it was 2 different system demos to see how those systems would meet the requirements we developed for them, and then ended up picking Sage Intacct. And then at that point, the fun really starts with the implementation, and that's where it becomes very personalized. We work with a lot of clients throughout the year, and up until that point, there's a lot of themes, I guess, through the different process points that we see. There are a lot of themes in what people are looking for in a system. But then when we get to the actual implementation, every team is going to be different. So there are going to be things that each team is going to want or work better with, different dynamics throughout that team. And that's where you have to get a little bit more personalized on how you really do that implementation to make sure it's successful. So we worked with Encompass to push them enough so that there was change. We wanted to make sure that they weren't just taking the same old processes and dumping them into a new system. So there was going to be a push of change to get into a workflow that is a little bit more modern. But we also felt a way to make people comfortable enough with that change. So we weren't pushing too far, but just enough so that there was some a little bit of using the system in a different way that they were used to. So first, we have another poll coming up, I believe, at this point. And then we're going to be going on to talk about a number of different areas that working with Adam and his team, we found that there was a starting point and how this system has really changed how Encompass operates in a much better way. So we're going to talk through a couple of subjects here and discuss how the past operated, how the current operations go, and then you can see a lot of the benefits that come from not only going through a process like this, but really getting into a modern ERP system that's going to really provide a lot more support for you and your staff. And we want to encourage any questions along the way here as well. So feel free to drop those in the question Q&A section. All right. So first, one of the biggest points I think Adam mentioned was the increased help in internal controls. So the old process really was a lot of disconnected silos. We had teams working separately, doing their own work and not really seeing the bigger picture and how that work affected other teams. So there wasn't a lot of connection on how everything worked together and worked together correctly. So Adam, do you want to talk about how you've seen that change with the use of Intact?
It's been fantastic, and I'm going to speak very highly of Intact because we're very happy with the system. There are other systems out there, and depending upon who you are, what you do, how you work, different ones can fit you differently. Internal controls, our internal controls are so much better than they were before. My auditor's on the call, so I'll be careful about what I say and what it used to be. But yeah, our internal controls were fine. But they were all manual driven. I'll just use one example. When we got back in the old days, you got an invoice and it got passed around and people initialed it and approved it, and that was your documentation. Then we kind of moved to the cloud, if you will, and we used a DocuSign version of DocuSign, a different provider, to get signatures. But it was incumbent upon our staff to figure out, okay, who does it go to? Where does it go? What order does it go? And create that for each and every different transaction. In Intact right now, we have a series of different transaction options. And once the transaction option is selected, the routing for approvals is automatic within the system. No one has to think about it. No one has to do anything about it. It just goes. If the transaction isn't fully approved, it doesn't make it into the system. The way Intact's built, it's sitting there as pending. Until that final approval happens, it's not quote unquote official. So it's allowed us to literally bake our internal controls into the system, which has been huge. And we'll talk about other things later, examples of documentation in the system. I can't overstate the importance of the strengthening of internal controls. And I don't mean from the perspective of, well, the auditors are going to be happy. It's got nothing to do with the auditors being happy. It's me being able to go home at night and sleep well, knowing that we have this, and it doesn't depend on if somebody's out for a day and they forgot something or they're not feeling well. It just happens. So it's a huge weight off of the shoulders of me and my team to know that these things are happening automatically.
And as someone who works with clients on risk mitigation too, I want to bring in the big R word. Better internal controls means less risk, and auditors love to hear that. So always a bonus. So our next topic is probably one of the biggest changes that's hard to make for some people, about chart of accounts. A lot of legacy systems, we'll call them, have a certain way of representing charts. And a lot of times you'll see this as a very, very long string of numbers or letters or, I don't know, special symbols, but they get very complicated and lengthy. So Adam, do you want to talk about how we pushed you into a very fun, uncomfortable zone about changing your chart of accounts?
Well, I'm going to just take a half a step back. And when we started this process, I'm not here to sell AAFCPAs. I am here to sell the use of a consultant, and I highly recommend AAFCPAs in this process. I've been doing this over 21 years now, and this is the first full GL I've implemented. Others, CFOs out there may have done it once or twice. Robyn, how many times have you implemented a new ERP?
Dozens and dozens.
Right. So the whole idea of bringing Robyn and her team in was they don't, they're not experts about us. They're experts about the process and implementation. And that was hugely helpful. And sort of the line I gave to Robyn when we signed the engagement letter was that her job was to counteract my failure, my fear that I wasn't going to have the failure, be able to imagine what was possible because I knew us, but I didn't know the systems. They did that. And the chart of accounts was a perfect example of that. I decided early on that we were blowing up the entire general ledger. I was not going to be beholden to the structure we had, the numbers we used, the format. Just start with a blank piece of paper and just move forward because that made the most sense for me and for us as an agency. So I spent a lot of time on the chart of accounts because, as you know, this is the skeleton everything is built on. And I spent a lot of time thinking about what our chart of accounts should be, and I made some changes previously. And I came up with something, and I sent it over to Robyn and said, so here's what I have. What do you think? And Robyn said, can we have a conversation about this? And we did. And it was what I'll call a robust conversation. It was the exact conversation that I was paying Robyn to have with me. And she said, well, why don't you consider this? And it was tough to hear because I had spent a lot of time on this. But I pondered it and in the end made a bunch of changes to the chart of accounts that we have now, which is fantastic and far and away better than what we had. Part of that was Intact, the ability of Intact. As Robyn said, we used to use, you see the X's, the Y's, Z's, which is an account, a program, and a sub-program. But each one of those was unique. So I would have to create each individual combination of accounts, programs, and sub-programs. In Intact, we don't. There's an account. If I want that to be available for a department, I click a box. I don't have to create another account. And I want it to be available for the Z segment, I click a box. It's much easier to deal with. The reporting flows much better. But going in terms of the chart of accounts, this is where you need to spend a ton of time. And I would encourage you to lean on your consultant as part of this, because they'll be able to say, what about this? What about that? Situations that you, your CFO, your team have never really thought about.
And this is really going back to, one of the challenges in a human service agency is, your locations, all your different programs, your funding sources, your chart of accounts really can help reflect all of that, various contracts. If you have a UFR, how to get the programs to roll up into your Schedule Bs on your UFR. This is really where it all starts.
Yep. And ironically enough, we always look at what the end product is going to be to help create this chart. So how does the reporting have to look? At what level is the reporting? And that really helps with developing those segments so that you can know where to slice and dice all of your information, and knows where and helps with the level of detail that you really need. I think as accountants, we try to get fairly detailed all the time, and sometimes that's just not necessary. So it's really good to take a step back and reevaluate why you're doing the work that you're doing and if it's necessary or not. All right, so our next topic is about documentation. So this seems to be almost a byproduct sometimes of an implementation, where with a lot of legacy accounting systems, they are purely accounting systems. There are a lot of other systems that go into place just to keep up with contracts. As Health and Human Services, you guys have a lot of contracts that you have to deal with. And there are a lot of separate systems to really get those organized. I know with Incompass, there were a lot of the AP storage happened elsewhere too. That was not included in the system. And as far as grant reporting was concerned, there wasn't a lot of integration there either. So now with Intact and actually just overall process improvement, do you want to tell us how things are going now, Adam?
Absolutely. As Robyn said, prior to this, we were in the big file cabinets where everything was stored in paper, and partially as a result of the pandemic, we had to go somewhat paperless, and we did, but everything was stored in Windows folders, and there was no security over it. I'm happy to say that for the past 2 years, we're 100% paperless. We don't produce or retain any paper, and every single thing is stored in Intact. Old system, there was no way to attach documentation to support a journal entry. Well, now you can. Seems kind of basic, but I'm sure many people on this call, you're on a legacy system like that. The amount of data we can store in Intact is, it's incomprehensible. There's no limit. And the ability to be able to look at a journal entry, pop open the detail and say, oh, this is what we did 6 months later. Many of you on this call will appreciate the importance of that. On the AP side, all the invoices, all the documentation is stored in the system. On the AR side, we can do the same thing as well. Bank statements can be stored in the bank rec feature. W-9s can be stored in the vendor information. ACH information can also be stored in the vendor information. So it's not just not having paper, it's not really needing, for the most part, another digital storage file cabinet.
And always knowing where it's going to be.
Always knowing where it's going to be.
Yeah. And especially for reporting, a lot of times needing that information right there at that transaction level to record an expense. I'm sure that's helpful. You always know where that's going to be and can PDF it and send it.
And also on that point, there are two different, this is internal control and a security issue. The internal controls is that, or I start with the security issue, no one can delete it. None of my team except me has the ability to delete anything from the system. So someone can't accidentally say, oops, it's gone. And from the internal control perspective, there's a detailed audit trail for every single transaction. So you can always see what happened.
Robyn, I'd like to bring up a question from the Q&A chat.
Sure.
So in talking about the chart of accounts and documentation, right in the system, somebody's wondering if the chart of accounts should be linked to transactions in other enterprise systems like payroll or the EMR.
Depends on what you mean by linked.
Okay.
But typically when you are talking about integrating systems like that, it's going to be a little bit of a rabbit hole. But you want to make sure that you are defining what information needs to be integrated. So like when you're talking about integrating an EMR, that's very doable. But you don't want all of the line item transaction information from your EMR into your ERP. You want to have batched information. So then you're really looking at just connecting that batched information into your ERP to that account level. And maybe a sub account of some sort. But so it really is important to, I would start with defining that main chart in your ERP of what you need to develop those reports that you need to generate. And then if you're talking about bringing in other information, they should be mapped to those accounts somehow that are generating those final reports. But definitely think twice about how much information you're sharing.
Yeah, you
integration
don't want
isn't
every
always
transaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right. So next we kind of have a discussion a little along the lines of that chart of accounts and some of the benefits that can have. Previously, Incompass couldn't really track the departmental P&Ls necessarily. There was a lot of overlapping information. Things weren't consistently delegated down to that department level. and it had to be generated on a separate level and manipulated a bit to be able to be emailed out to the staff. So departmental tracking was not an easy push of a button. And now with Intact,
this sort of goes back a little bit to the chart of accounts. As you're looking to, if you're going to create a brand new chart of accounts, departmental tracking, departmental reporting, or however, whatever unit you use, doesn't have to be a department, you really need to know ahead of time what you're going to want to do, and you can build the system to accommodate that. In Intact, in our experience, reporting is very flexible and is what I call self-service customization. So given the appropriate security clearances, the department manager can go in and run a report and change the parameters if they want. I call that democratization of reporting. I don't send reports out to, other than very high level reports, at the end of the month. I'd like to believe that the members of the ELT and department managers are pulling reports. I have no way to know, so I'm going to assume they are, but they can run them themselves. And they've all been trained in how to do it. The other really nice thing, and we'll talk about dashboards in the next slide, is you can pin a report to a dashboard. So when I log in the morning, my P&L for the current month literally pops up as part of my screen. And we set that up for directors, where when they open the P&Ls for the current month, just pop up and they see them right there without having to do anything.
And so with that said,
I'm sorry, Robyn. And Adam, those users, those department heads that are logging in, read-only access for them? They can't post any transactions, or can they?
Yes, all the users have individual security clearances based upon assignment of roles, and their roles allow them to view, and they can make changes in the parameters for running a report, but they can't do anything other than that. And that goes to approval. There are various roles for approvals, so you can't approve something that you don't have visibility to.
And I'm going to bring up that whole subject and concept is often an interesting one to bring up with clients. The old view of the accounting system being the accounting system is very different from today's view of an ERP system being for everybody. So, limit the tax on your accounting team for generating reports and providing people information, and give people access, let them access their own information 100 times a day if they want to. It provides a lot more responsibility, a lot more monitoring, and really pushes the work out to team leaders who are the ones who are in charge of controlling that work. So it definitely creates a different mindset for a lot of staff by reorganizing in that way. So next we have dashboards, which Adam already mentioned. They had none. So my part is pretty easy on this slide.
So dashboards, we're going to talk about spend management a little bit later, so I'll skip that. But it's easy access to, as I said, to immediate information. For my purpose as a CFO, I have certain things set up. So when I log on, I can see open transactions on the AR side, the AP side, things waiting for my approval, what months are open, what months are closed, various different reports. And these can be set up, and I've set them up for our leadership team and anyone of a certain level in the agency. They can go in and what do you look at? What do you want to look at? Okay, great. Let's put a dashboard there. Add a report, change a metric that you can see. It's a great time saver. And also, I don't want to use the word force, because I don't mean force, but it kind of forces people to look at things. Yes, they can ignore, sign on, but when I sign on, I see my P&L. I can look at it. I can understand it. The other thing about dashboards is, at least with Intact, the reports have the drill down feature. So you can look at a report, you can click on a button on a number for the current month actual, and you'll see all the actual right there right from the dashboard. It'll push you all the way down to the invoice level on accounts payable or on the AR side. So it's great to be able to do this month-end task as well. There's an assignment, a checklist system in Intact where every month we push out the assignments for everyone on the accounting team, the finance team, as to what they have to do by when. Put a little tile on the dashboard, and it shows you these are your assignments that aren't done yet. So it's right there for you.
All right. So next, we're going to talk about another huge topic that was quite a game changer, the accounts payable process. Previously, they were using a kind of like a third-party e-signature, kind of like a DocuSign, to be able to manually route every bill to the right person. And that was a lot of challenge in and of itself, because it's not exactly easy to take a bill and figure out who that has to go to, get it to the right person, get the multiple signatures. And then somebody goes on vacation, and what happens then? So, and then all the bills were just filed in a central filing place in SharePoint. So now, using Intact's account payables workflows, how is that working for you?
Again, I won't, in the interest of time, I'm not going to read everything that's on the slide, but I talked about previously about how effective it has been for us in terms of routings and the various transactions. We had, and I remember our implementation consultant from Intact had made the comment that she's never seen an approval hierarchy quite like ours before. It is, shall we say, unique. The system allows us to bake that into the system. So if one transaction has to go through route A, another goes through route B, we just process them as route A transactions and route B transactions. They go on their merry way. If someone's out on vacation, for certain staff, we can delegate things. So if I'm on vacation, for example, I delegate everything to my boss, and it'll just go to her instead, which is why she doesn't like it when I'm on vacation, because everything goes to her. When my staff's on vacation, they delegate to me. We just click a button and everything moves. The rules are also such that if there's a change in personnel, it's fairly easy to make those changes. It really is extremely helpful. The comment here, rejection and comments. Before, you send something back, well, this is no good for this reason. You have to change this. When I decline something, I can comment on it, and that is part of the actual record of the transaction, not just the audit trail, but the transaction. So I don't have to get up and say to somebody, your Teams chat, that fix this. I decline it. Hey, you've got the wrong GL account. Please fix it. It will show in the process of that transaction, the trail of that transaction, that it was put through. I declined it. Here's why I declined it. It goes back, and everything is in the system. It really is. I don't know how we lived before sometimes, because of what we're doing now.
And I'm sure for the auditors, that's also a nice feature to be able to see that everything was approved correctly, actually see the bill along with the record and all of that. That's usually a big hit with auditors. So along with accounts payable, there's a feature in a lot of systems today that is very, very helpful, especially for nonprofits that are running against grant budgets and things like that. So previously, they're really, Incompass really worked with these they work with allowances for people who are helping the programs out. And this would have to be done by Excel. So if a helper got $1,000 a year, you would have to track every bill against that $1,000 allowance that they got in Excel and do all of that manually, which you can imagine is not only time consuming, it's a huge risk for missing something. And it's a lot of manpower for something that isn't of huge reward, I guess. So now using the spend management feature in Intact, things are done a little bit differently, right?
This was an unbelievable game changer for us. We have a couple of different situations where people have, individuals or whatever the case may be, have annual budgets. And in the past, they were tracked by the program staff. And I say tracked loosely because program staff do not have generally the same skills as a finance team. They're good working with people and tracking numbers and is not their skill set generally. So they would keep these informal Excel spreadsheets that only they had access to. Oh yeah, this person still has money left because it's not on my list. When a bill went through without their knowledge or their vacation, it was a huge mess. And I can't tell you how much time I spent every year trying to clean this up and make sure that we spent the right amount of money. Because if we paid something for an individual or a family over the limit, we had to eat it because we couldn't get it reimbursed. Now with spend management, think of it as budgets for individual projects, and a person as a project. The program staff that run these programs, they have immediate access at all times on their dashboard to these reports. They can see that Robyn Leet has a $2,000 budget for the year and has already spent $550, and you can spend $1,450. They won't even try to process something for $1,500. See it right there. The other side of that transaction is that it does happen at the end, but that final person to approve that transaction, if it's for over the budget amount, the system will not allow it. It will not allow approval of anything that's in excess of the budget amount. So the combination of those two things has saved us so much time, not just in finance, but also in programs, money in not having to eat things that were over budget, and so much less frustration. It is, I mean, I said it before, this is a huge game changer for us.
Robyn, you're on mute still.
Yeah, sorry about that. So if you deal with a lot of grant expenses and having to track all that constantly, especially if the operation is spread out amongst a lot of people, this tool is really, really handy to see where you are. We've worked with a lot of clients that do this after the fact too. So this does help you do it all along the way instead of taking the bucket at the end of the month or quarter and then having to redistribute it. So this really is a very powerful tool to keep you on track throughout the timeline.
And you can use this creatively too. I don't mean that facetiously, but there are ways you can use this that might not be just natural to think of. It's a really, really powerful tool.
Oh.
Now, Robyn, is this part of, basic Intact, or you have to know to set this piece up?
So on Intact, this is an additional module. There are other platforms out there that do have features like this. They all operate just a little bit differently, but each platform that you look at, it's either going to be a module or just a configuration that you toggle on and off and have to set up the parameters and all of that.
Okay.
It is a separate module at Intact, but it's not ridiculously expensive. It's a very reasonable cost for this feature.
And if somebody has already if they already have Intact, but they haven't explored this module, is that something that you can help people set up?
Absolutely. Yep. You just add that right on. Yeah. And you won't even notice it. It's not like you have to go into a different place or anything. It's all very, very integrated.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. So next we do have another poll coming up. So just wake up and answer your poll question. And we got a few more topics to go through, and feel free to add some questions on here too. All right. Our next topic is all about bank transactions. So this is kind of a broad topic, but an important one for a lot of people. So previously, Incompass has entered all of their bank transactions manually. So taken the account statement and had to enter in line by line all the bank transactions, and then done a manual reconciliation at the end of the month, which I think is what quite a few people do out there. But now with Intact, what kind of tools do they offer to help out, Adam?
Well, the bank transactions have different sides. On the AP side, the notcha files, it produces a standard notcha file. ACH is our preferred method of payment. We're writing fewer and fewer checks, and I wish we would write even fewer, especially these days with mail delays and with check washing. It's becoming a bigger risk on the other side. So we try to pay everything by ACH and Intact. And I'm sure any system that a consultant's going to take you to would have that functionality. It allows us to import bank transactions, but Intact does have an option to allow you to link directly to your bank. Unfortunately for us, it doesn't work with the bank we use, just sort of the way it works, which is sad for us. But the reconciliation process is much better than in the past. We have to upload the transactions into Intact, but from that point, there are various matching rules that you can use to knock off a lot of the transactions initially. And even if you can't knock them off, the process is very user-friendly and relatively benign. I wish we could use this for more. We just can't, unfortunately.
Yeah, so that is one thing. Each system is going to have a list of banks that they integrate with. Unfortunately, Encompass's bank does not integrate, but when you are looking at a system, check that out. Or even if you have a modern system now, check out if they do integrate. This is such a great tool to speed up the whole month-end process or weekend, however often you get your bank transactions in there.
And it really does make an impact. I had a staff transition not too long ago, and it was the person who was doing the bank reconciliation. So I was looking at the process and I saw the way it was being done. And I said, "Are you importing transactions into Intact?" "No." "Why not?" So the bank reconciliation went from being a full day to being a couple hours.
Yeah. Definitely very helpful.
And that's significant, especially these finance teams that are having to do more with less people, and really get creative with resources. So that's significant.
All right, we've got a couple more topics here. Next one is about allocations. And I know if you have to deal with time or space allocations, things like that, they can get really, really complicated. I think I have seen some of the most impressive Excel work done ever on some allocation spreadsheets from people. So doing these manually can get very, very complicated. In the old system at Encompass, they were done within the system, but it was not super easy to manage. So Intact made that a lot easier as well.
It did. The system, part of it is going from, I used to say the 80s called and they wanted their software back in the old system, but I think that was kind of a knock on the 80s. It may not have been that good, even that good. Part of it is the look and feel and just being a modern system that makes it better. But it really is much better for us. There's audit trails, there's history. And one of the nice things is that you can undo or delete. Delete's a nasty word about when you talk about accounting credit, but you can delete allocations. Oh, crap. We found out something happened after the allocation. You can just delete the allocation and redo it. And it's a few seconds to do it. So it's very flexible. The statistical account usage is also nice. So if you change your space allocation from one department to another, just go in the quick entry and it updates everything. So it is quite powerful.
Yeah, that's a good point on the statistical. See how difficult that is to say? Statistical accounts as a concept that is not in a lot of old systems where you can import non-financial information into your GL. So things like square feet or heads per department or other things like that can be the basis of your allocations, and you could update this every single month. So you not only don't have to change your allocation formulas because they're still pointing back to the same statistical accounts, but you can also see the trend in those accounts and see how they're changing from month to month. So it's really great tool for a number of reasons there.
And even from a federal compliance or state compliance level, in thinking about the importance of really truing up your allocations to actual. This I imagine would be a significant time saver in that process and really helping you to ensure compliance.
Yeah, we have clients who will import every single employee time to each program or cost center, and then be able to do allocations based upon the salaries off of that, which is a pretty typical thing that has to be done. And to be able to do that with the press of a button every single month is pretty powerful. All right, so we're on to our last topic, which is about the budget. So again, very manual, time-consuming process before, but the reporting itself was done very manually. So there wasn't that push of a button reporting that could be done out of the system. And it was very difficult to get the file actually into the old system because there were so many of those very long account strings that we were talking about, and each line had to have a separate budget amount. So budgeting happens a little bit differently within Intact.
Yeah, it's a very easy process. I mean, we do not use a third party budgeting system, much to Robyn's dismay. Maybe we'll get there one day, but right now it's still Excel based. It works for us. So I can literally link everything directly into Excel spreadsheet that I essentially just import into Intact, and the budget's there. It takes a little, like anything, it takes a little bit of setup the first time, but it's very flexible. The old system, as Robyn said, it literally was thousands of lines long. It would import each month separately, and if there was an error in something, it kicked out the entire thing. The initial import took an hour. If there was a mistake, I had to go back and do it over again. It was really, really frustrating. That's not the case with Intact. You import it, and if there's an error, you'll get an error notice. They'll tell you exactly what the error is, but it's not a big deal just to fix it and do it over again. It is quite quick. It also accommodates as many different budget versions as you want. Again, that's the difference between a modern system and an old system that only accommodated one. And of course, the budgeting being so simple to import makes it easy to report off of as well. If it's easy to get the budget into the system, and we budget at the account level by department, so it's a very granular budget. Because it's so easy to get that in, we can report off at the same level.
And Adam, if things change throughout the year and you know this, you can update your budget and reforecast. Is that an easy process?
We can. It does. The system will allow you to pull it out. Our policy here is that once the budget is approved by the board, it never changes.
Okay.
So we'll do a mid-year forecast about to start that. The system is smart enough to be able to download that for you if you want it, and use that and just add to it. It's depending really how you want to approach it.
Okay.
And you can report the same way. If you wanted to change your reporting so it reports off of actuals for 6 months and a different budget, you can produce your report that way. It's easy enough to do.
Yeah, it's a lot more flexible and provides other options. And does it create a template for you too that you can print out or download, I guess I should say?
Yes.
Yeah.
In Intact, you can download a template from virtually anything. Anything that you can import, Intact will say, here's the template to download. And you can just work from that.
Yep. A lot easier. All right. So we have our final poll. And then that kind of wraps up all of our big topics to discuss with you guys today. Hope that it was enlightening to talk through all of these different subject areas and what the possibilities out there are. Also know you're not alone if you are struggling with some of the things that Adam was talking about on the old process, but there are solutions out there for you. And I want to reiterate that all of these things that we did in conjunction with Incompass to make sure that it worked for them. There are a ton of other features that are out there, and it really does depend on what product you go with too. We don't get commissions from Intact or any of the other products out there on the market. I just want to put that out there. So each product will have different features for you, and you can continually take advantage of them as you are on their system. Every year, there are new things that come out too. So there's always a opportunity to make some other advancements, even if you've gone through this huge change like Adam and his team did a couple of years ago. Intact is always coming out with new things that come on. So never stop changing. Keep looking into things that are coming onto the market, and have that mindset of continuous improvement.
And Robyn, you and your team, you have expertise in many different systems.
Yes.
So, like, just to reiterate, no commissions on Intact. That's the example that we've walked through, but you're able to do this process improvement and system selection and help clients implement other systems as well.
Correct. Yep, absolutely. We are system agnostic, we call it. So we will direct you into where we know that your needs are going to be met, basically, and try to provide some different options for you along the way.
We have a couple of questions in the Q&A section, but before we get there, I do want to note on one of the additional features that was on the previous slide that we hadn't discussed, and I know it's one of Adam's favorite, is help during the audit process. So as his audit team, he gives us auditor access to Intact, and we're able to pull a lot of the information from the system, which I know has been a huge time saver on both Adam's time and on the audit side. It's really efficient. Would you agree, Adam?
Oh, it's been wonderful. The joke I tell is that yes, during compliance testing, no, I'll give you. They ask for sample selection on AP items. Like, no, just go get it in the system.
Yeah.
You can get it themselves. But this year I was talking to them. I got an email from the manager on the account and said something about they're ready to wrap up. I'm like, wait, you haven't done cash disbursement testing for this year or cutoff testing? And he said, oh yeah, we already did it in the system. It was done.
Yeah. Self-service for everybody, man.
Yep. It's fantastic.
Yep.
And yes, there is that, every CFO is going to have if I give them access, what else are they going to see? I mean, it's natural. It's part of who we are. But it is what it is. I mean, the reality is we shouldn't have anything to hide from our auditors. So what are they going to see? That we took 3 steps to do something that take us 1? Yeah, okay, we can get better on that.
Now in the chat here, we have a couple questions on third-party AP payments. So if an entity uses already, a third party to issue to pay bills,
yep,
does Intact have the ability to integrate with that, or how does that work?
I'm going to go the next step and say any system that we would recommend does have the ability to integrate. There are a number of things on the market, not just, what do you have? You've got Bill, Tipalti, Stamply, all of these things. Yes, they can all integrate. We have not met one that doesn't yet. Okay.
And how about, and Adam, this might be a question for you too. Does Intact have the ability to be used as a repayee system?
Well, I work with a consultant who's tried every which way to convince me that it could. But
who asked that? I didn't pay them.
My opinion is no, it really can't. Robyn and her team have really tried to figure out, kidding aside, because I'd like to be able to do it that way, ways, but I just don't see it as feasible. In fact, we just kicked out our old RepPay software and converted to a new system because Intact just can't do it. And the more I thought about it, the more I'm not really upset about that. I do kind of insist on that Chinese wall between the two, between the RepPay work, because that reports to me, and the Incompass finance work. So having 2 different systems is not the end all be all for me.
Okay. I know it's its own beast.
We just converted to RPM. We're not live with it yet. We're going live January 1st.
What is it?
RPM.
RPM.
and we were with another 80 software Exact. They don't tell them, they don't know we're leaving yet.
Right.
I'm still convinced it could maybe happen, but you'd have to play around with it.
So I just want to thank everyone again. I want to close with gratitude here. I really want to thank you for spending your hour with us. We have, please feel free to reach out to any of us or to your AAFCPAs advisor on any additional questions, or if you'd like to discuss this further, I would be happy to do so. This session,
and I'm happy to be a resource. So if you would like to, if you have a question for me, or feel free to talk to Robyn or Katie, and they can put you in touch with them.
Excellent. Thank you, Adam. And thank you so much for your participation today. We really appreciate your perspective and really sharing your journey with us here.